After 2 weeks on the road, ACU football is coming home. I'm Shera Niemirowski.
And I'm Grant Boone. We'll preview that feline feud between the Wildcats and the Bearcats of Sam Houston State. We'll have a special homecoming visit from an ACU legend. It's the Ken Collums Show right now. Welcome to Week 7 of the Ken Collums Show, presented by Lawrence Hall. I'm Grant Boone, joined by ACU senior journalism major Shera Niemirowski and the head football coach at ACU, Ken Collums. It's homecoming weekend here at ACU. That means lots of festivity, familiar faces, whole lot of football. Coach, I'd imagine it'd be a little easier to be festive if you didn't have to game plan for one of the best teams in the country coming in here. Sam Houston State rolls into Shotwell Stadium today. Coach, this is the 10th year now that you've been here at ACU, the 11th season, but 10 years ago was your first ACU homecoming. As the offensive coordinator, you've become head coach. What does homecoming at ACU now mean to you that maybe it didn't mean to you when you first got here?
Well, homecoming now, there's just a little more to it. When you're basically an outsider coming in to any new situation, you're learning the lay of the land even. And now that, I know just what an impact ACU has had on so many people. And it's so cool for them to come in, see each other, and to watch a quality football game.
Coach, not only do you have a big game, you also have one of your past players, Danielle Manning, getting inducted into the ACU Sports Hall of Fame. What's that like for you?
It's just cool because it doesn't take long to figure out, just watching him. He's one of the most athletic people you'll ever see. And he's probably the best athlete I've ever been around.
Really?
But he is such a humble guy.
Yeah.
What just grips you about Danielle Manning is his humility. He can fit in anywhere. He can have a conversation with literally anybody, and he makes everybody feel like they're the most important person in the room, and that's huge.
It's a great point. I remember going to watch Danielle and his teammate at the time, Johnny Knox, play Bernard Scott when the Bears played the Bengals, and then President Dr. Royce Money was there, and there's Danielle holding court, and he's one of a magnificent 7 going into the ACU Hall of Fame this weekend. It's been a big weekend already. We'll take a look more in-depth at that Hall of Fame class a little bit later on in the show, but when we come back, highlights and analysis of ACU's game against Lamar last weekend from Coach Collums. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Ken Collums Show, presented by Lawrence Hall. Last Saturday night in Beaumont, ACU lost to Lamar 44-28. As a furious second-half rally fell just a little bit short. Coach, you played with 2 offensive linemen in new positions. You had Dakota Laws moved out from right guard to right tackle, and even Dakota's only been on campus a couple of months, true freshman. You moved Frank Key from defensive line to offensive line, where he played at TCU. How much of those guys in new positions contributed to the struggles in the first half?
Anytime you play new people, you run the risk of not being sharp. Anytime you play new people on the offensive line, there's a chance it could fall apart on you. We didn't do that if we didn't trust those guys. We know them. Dakota's done a great job.
He really has.
I mean, what kind of rookie comes in and does what he does? And he is a tough kid, and he's only getting better. Now, there was a couple of times where we had some minor issues. Of course, on the O-line, you don't ever have minor issues.
Every minor issue becomes major.
Right. But it's not like they were on the wrong people. It's like they didn't handle things just exactly like you're supposed to.
Let's talk about that. First drive of the game, right?
Yes.
You have a 4th down and a couple.
4th and 2.
So this is great analysis. This is a great example of something that may not show up to the naked eye. It's not so much a physical mistake necessarily, is it?
No, it wasn't. And we had an inside zone call to the left, and what a zone play is all your linemen kind of move in the same direction. That's how you know it's kind of a zone. But they're counting people, D linemen, linebackers, and they're matching up their numbers with our numbers, and the alignment of a linebacker, 2 steps. Like if a linebacker is in front of Dakota, he's going to handle it differently than if he takes 2 steps out. Just two steps. They didn't handle that quite as clean as they probably should have, or that they will this week.
There you go.
And therefore, we got 1 yard instead of 2. And this the finer details.
Yeah.
There's so much there's an art to playing offensive line, and you can't just line up and do it because you're a good kid and you're tough. I mean, it takes a long time to figure that stuff out. Those 2 guys are going to be good players. The longer we keep them right beside each other, the better we're going to be.
You struggled for the 2nd straight week offensively. Little plays like that maybe aren't to the naked eye apparent cost you opportunities to extend drives. Then you had some other chances, did you? There were plays to be made in the first half, weren't there?
Sure, and when you struggle running the ball, which that's a resounding theme for us right now, we've got to run the ball better. We did not run the ball with much consistency at all in the first half. If you're not going to do that, you better be able to hit deep balls. You hit a couple of deep balls, and that's a game changer. Now all of a sudden, that is a momentum changer. It puts pressure on the defense. It makes them react, kind of question, okay, how are we handling first down? Should we back off, which is going to give us a little better chance to run the ball. We didn't make those plays in the first half.
Coach, we knew it was a dangerous situation going into the game. You had a defense that struggled to stop the run, your team, against not just the league's, but the nation's top running back in Kade Harrington. He had an historic night, 347 yards rushing, an all-time ACU opponent's record, an all-time Southland Conference record in terms of rushing yard total. As you diagnose your team's rush defense, is it easy to identify the issues? And if so, are they correctable, or are they things that can at least be incrementally improved upon?
Yeah, it's a little hit and miss on your question. Sometimes it's easy.
Okay.
Sometimes a guy is one gap away from where he should be. And then sometimes, we just got some guys in there that are young, and that the young people are going to miss tackles sometimes. And that's just the way it is. And we've got to tackle better at linebacker. And I told them in a team meeting, when God made linebackers, he made you to tackle. That's what you wake up thinking about tackling people. And when you're in class, you think about tackling. When you go to bed, you think about tackling. And we've got to tackle better. And when you have safeties, we actually moved Lynn Grady back to help make sure everybody's fitting right, and there's certain gaps and their assignments and in motion and all that. But we've got to, scheme-wise, we've got to be a little more sharper in the right place, recognize plays, and be more aggressive moving forward instead of waiting, then making the tackle.
Down 24-0 at halftime. Whatever you said and whatever adjustments you made worked, because in the second half you came out with guns blazing. You scored 28 points in the second half. You outscored Lamar, in fact, in the second half, and that was even with 2 turnovers. What was the difference from first half to second? Was it as simple as just executing plays?
Offensively, we simplified, a little more common sense football. We got away from some of our triple option stuff. So, and their D tackle in the middle has a lot to do with running in the middle. He's perhaps one of the best in the conference. And so we started using our fast guys out wide and throwing the ball down the field, which we made 2 plays doing that. And that changes everything. You hit a deep ball, and you'd like for it to score like Jonathan Epps did. That was a long ball that we cashed in on. And then in the fourth quarter, we hit Carl Whitley on a one-on-one matchup. He outcompeted the guy. You have to have those situations happen. The unfortunate part is when you start ginning on offense, you start clicking, but you still turn the ball over. That's a killer, and you can't do that. And that just goes to show you, as of right now, we didn't even put together one half of quality football. And the thing is if we're going to win tonight against Sam Houston, we got to have 4 quarters of that. And that is not acceptable football for anybody that's seen ACU play, and we'll get better. Well,
ACU comes back to Shotwell Stadium and tries to improve to 3-0 at home this season when they take on Sam Houston State in the homecoming game. Well, we will preview that game against the Bearcats a little bit later on, but as we go to break now, take a look at scores from around the Southland Conference last week and pay attention to that McNeese State win over Southeastern Louisiana, 21-7, in what was a matchup of 2 of the 3 unbeaten teams in conference play. McNeese will come to Shotwell Stadium on Halloween afternoon. In a couple of weeks in Southeastern Louisiana, we'll be here on November the 14th. Stay with us here on the Ken Collums Show, presented by Lawrence Hall.
Welcome back to the Ken Collums Show, brought to you by Lawrence Hall. Grant caught up with ACU football legend Wally Bullington to learn more about the newest group in the ACU Sports Hall of Fame.
Coach, 7 individuals going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Let's start with a guy you watched run, Calvin Cooley.
He was a high hurdler and a low hurdler and a sprinter, and ran on the relay teams. Calvin was on the outstanding relay team that set national records in the 880-yard relay, and just was a great athlete.
Coach, do you think that through the years we've lost a little bit of appreciation for how dominant on an international level the ACU track teams were with people like Calvin?
You know, I think so. In recent years, we probably have, but Calvin, along with Dennis Richardson and Bud Clanton and Earl Young, made up a world record relay team, and they were just super athletes.
Teresa Rubart Grounds was really the first great women's basketball player that ACU had once it became a varsity sport. Coach, what does it say about an athlete when you consider that 40 years later, in her case, for example, still being the all-time leading rebounder, that a record still stands after all those years?
That certainly tells you what a great athlete she was. And, you know, to have the rebounding ability that she had to set rebounding records that still stand 40 years later speaks a lot.
1,200 career rebounds almost for Teresa Rubart Grounds. Coach, you recruited a young man named Mike Lively in the mid-1970s. He's given us a couple of players, his sons in the 2000s, but Mike was a terrific player on the defensive line for you, went on to win a national championship here in 1977. What do you remember about Mike?
Mike had great feet. The defensive lineman, he was a defensive tackle. You look for quick feet in a defensive lineman and strong upper body strength, and Mike had both.
When you think about Jared Mosley, what do you think of first? The work he did as director of athletics or the work he did on the basketball court?
Well, I have to go back and think of the work he did on the basketball court. You can't overlook the work he did as an athletic director, but he was a great basketball player. Not only that, but he was a great student.
You can appreciate what Breck Horn did here. You being a former coach, she got here in 1999. Coach, she had a competitive fire that you don't see in many women or men.
Breck is very competitive, still is. I watch her at the Little League games with her son. She still competes very hard, even from the stands, but her 31 consecutive wins in volleyball is very, very outstanding.
When you think back over the history of ACU football, you have a perspective that very few have. You got here in the late 1940s as a player. You've watched the greats all through the years. Where does Danielle Manning stack up in terms of electricity as a player, in terms of taking over a game?
Danielle is one of the greatest athletes we've ever had. Went on to have a great career in the NFL with the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans, and retired in 2015, just a few months ago.
Last but certainly not least, Coach, something of a Lifetime Achievement Award going to Don Drennan, who is a former director of athletics here at ACU. When you think about Don, what do you think about?
Well, Don Drennan always had the leadership qualities, and he developed them. When I first started coaching at Abilene High School as an assistant under the great Chuck Mosier, Don Drennan was a student body president at Abilene High School.
The 7 members were inducted Friday night as part of homecoming weekend. Here's Hannah Knoll with other ACU sports updates.
Welcome to this week's JMC Network Sportscast. I'm Hannah Knoll. Volleyball claimed 2 conference wins against Lamar University and Sam Houston last week. The Wildcats beat the Cardinals 3-1. Lamar had 5 consecutive unplayable serves and 26 total errors, which allowed ACU to jump ahead. Kendall Boss led the Wildcats offensively with 14 kills in the match, while Madison Hoover led defensively with 31 digs. The Cats then went on to defeat Sam Houston State. ACU won its first 5-set match of the season 3-2 against the Bearcats on Saturday. Jennifer Lurch added 17 kills to the Wildcat offense, while Hoover again contributed to the defense with 25 digs. Hoover's performance over the week earned her the Southland Conference Player of the Week award. The Wildcats were scheduled to face Houston Baptist University in Houston on Thursday. Soccer won 3-1 against conference opponent Houston Baptist University on the road last Friday. This win marks the Wildcats' longest winning streak since entering the Southland Conference at 3 games. Both teams remained scoreless through the first half, and junior midfielder Maria Gomez scored the first goal of the game in the 61st minute. Goalkeeper Cindy Newton did not surrender a goal until the 89th minute when HBU shot on a cross pass. This ended ACU's scoreless minute streak at 283 minutes 58 seconds, which was the longest since 2011 when the Wildcats recorded 3 consecutive shutouts. This victory puts the Wildcats at 4-1 in conference play and in second place in Southland standings. The team will travel to Beaumont to compete against Lamar on Friday and will travel to Louisiana to face McNeese on Sunday. Men's and women's basketball begins practice this week. The Wildcats are scheduled to play 9 non-conference games against Division I opponents before opening the 18-game Southland Conference schedule that begins on Saturday, January 2nd. Head coach Joe Golding said freshmen will be the key to his success of the season.
Yeah, it's tough. We got a lot, especially got a lot of freshmen. We have one junior college transfer, and then we have a bunch of freshmen. So there's good days and there's bad days. I think the good thing for them was the Costa Rica trip and the 20 extra workouts. I think that was a huge opportunity for those guys to kind of get ahead of the curve. It's still not Division I basketball, which they'll find out pretty quick here in about 44 days.
The women's team has 6 experienced upperclassmen back on their roster for the 2015-2016 season. And with the addition of 3 new freshmen, the Wildcats are looking to improve their 500 conference record from last year. The team's home opener is scheduled for November 14th in Moody Coliseum against Wayland Baptist University. Head coach Julie Goodenough said that she will be relying on experience this year.
We've got a great group of returners. We're carried by our juniors and seniors this year. We have 6 juniors and seniors, and we're going to rely heavily on their game experience and just them being a little more mature. And so we're looking forward to the season. We're really excited about it.
That's all for this time. Thanks for watching the JMC Network Sportscast. I'm Hannah Null.
Thanks, Hannah. Stay with us on the Ken Collums Show, brought to you by Lawrence Hall.
Welcome back to the Ken Collums Show, presented by Lawrence Hall. Take a look at today's schedule for teams in the Southland Conference today. A second straight week, McNeese will battle for first place. The Cowboys handed Southeastern Louisiana its first conference loss last Saturday. Tonight, the Cowboys host Central Arkansas in a matchup of the last 2 unbeaten teams in the conference. Well, today at Shotwell, homecoming for the ACU football team. The Wildcats welcome in the Sam Houston State Bearcats, making their first visit to Abilene since 1984, when both teams were members of the Lone Star Conference. Coach, when we saw Sam last year in Huntsville, they were scuffling a little bit. They were under 500 when we got them. Well, they righted the ship in a hurry. They went all the way to the FCS playoffs semifinals. And while they don't come in boasting a sparkling record, you throw in the fact they played Texas Tech for one of those games. They lost another game to Lamar by 3 in a hotly contested contest. When you look at this Bearcat team that's currently 3-2, is this the kind of Sam Houston State club that could make a run deep into the playoffs again?
I don't think there's any doubt, because what they have the same pieces they had last year, except they're a little bit older. They didn't lose very many players, and what they've got is they've got quality skill guys on offense. They've got a lot of depth on the O-line. Their defensive front that is at least 2 deep with quality big strong people. They play a lot of people. Play 4 safeties. They're going to play multiple, and all that means is they're going to be able to withstand a couple of injuries, and they're going to be able to keep moving. And that's what you want in an established program, and that's where ACU is trying to get to here in several years. When we keep growing and keep growing, that's where we want to be.
Coach, you mentioned their awesome defense. Let's get a little deeper into it. Your offense versus their defense. Last week, they had 3 interceptions and 3 sacks. What is your offense going to do this week to keep them off?
Well, the number one thing we better do if we expect to be successful is we got to run the ball better. We have to run the ball better, because their defensive line reminds me of Central Arkansas.
That's not good.
No, it gave us, well, it is very good.
Good for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it gives you fits on the O-line, just as far as creating space, expanding space for running lanes. I don't know that we're going to have to be more creative, but our guys are better, are 2 games older 2 games more mature than they were against Central Arkansas. They're pretty basic as far as their fronts, and we're going to need them to be, because we've got to get a body on a body and we've got to expand some space. So first thing we have to do is establish a little bit of running game, and then throw and catch and protect the ball. You're not going to turn the ball over 3 times and beat them, just like we did last year. We went down there, we were not turning the ball over, and we turned the ball over quite a few times last year.
Well, their defense scored 2 touchdowns with your offense on the field, and that really was the difference. Otherwise, it's 24-21. But then you throw those 2 defensive touchdowns in, and it totally changed the game. Let's flip it around. Coach, I mean, this is the #1 scoring offense in all of FCS football. They're the #2 total yards offense in the FCS, facing a beaten-up ACU defense. I would imagine you're going to have almost every one of your players play their very best on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you can't rise to the occasion after getting knocked around for the last 2 weeks, then you need to check yourself. I mean, this is a good team coming in here. It doesn't take long to figure out, hey, these guys, if you're not sharp, they can ring it up on you, just like Central Arkansas did in the first half, and just like Lamar did to us in the first half. But our guys know that. We'll be playing hard, and I think you'll see a good showing from our defense.
Well, ACU is unbeaten at home this year. Let's hope that trend continues. Let's move to 3-0 with a big win.
Let's do it.
In front of a homecoming crowd today against Sam Houston State. It's going to be a big day at Shotwell Stadium. There's a Letterman's Association football Letterman's pregame tailgate out there a couple of hours before game time. Now, here's a quick note in case you haven't heard yet. The game has been moved from 2 o'clock to 2:30 to accommodate a regional television audience. So it's a 2:30 kickoff at Shotwell versus Sam Houston State today. We'll have the broadcast for you beginning at 2 p.m. I'll be joined on the radio broadcast and webcast by former ACU great Bob Shipley. Hope you can make it out to Shotwell. If not, join us on the ACU Sports Network. For Shera and for Coach Collums, I'm Grant Boone. Enjoy the game today. Happy homecoming, and thanks for watching the Ken Collums Show presented by Lawrence Hall. We'll see you right here next week.